Okay, fellas, so just real quick, I wanted to go through the products that I used on this particular car, and I got the two pieces here. I got the damaged piece and the new piece, just to compare the colors. You can kind of tell on the camera, but thought it'd be cool to put there. But anyway, for the materials that I used on the car, I used Transcar 2K epoxy sealer. I used the U-Pole high build primers for the bodywork, and Chromax color. This is the Exalta line. I don't know if it's new, but it's really kind of fairly new. I'm used to using Chroma Base, which they've kind of got rid of. This is their new base coat clear, and I'm pretty impressed with it. It worked really well. As you can tell, the color match was really good. The texture, or the metallics matched up good, and I'm pretty happy with it. This does mix 2 to 1, where the old Chroma Base was 1 to 1. This one's 2 to 1, so it's thicker, and it's pretty good coverage. This blue color covered really well, and the sealer I used was gray, and so it took a little bit longer to cover, but 3 coats pretty well covered it. And then I've been using the Euro Quick Clear Transtar 7211. It's a really thick, high solids clear, and yesterday spraying with the Fuji gun with a 1.4 tip on it, it sprayed really well. So I like this stuff here. Now typically you want to use one line of paint for everything, and I pretty much did, other than U-Pole. So try to always stick with the same products you're using. A lot of the body shops you're going to work in order to get your warranty work, you have to use every one of their products. So always try your very best to use all the same exact products. And so anyway, that's just a rundown of how it went. I think it turned out really well. So now it's time to put the car back together. I got the bumper over here, and we're going to put it back together and send it home today. All right, so now it's time to put our little Honda CRV back together. And as I showed you in the first or second video, tag and bag. Right here I've got all of my bumper parts. Everything that came off of that bumper is in this bag. So all I simply have to do is lay these out on this table, and as I'm laying them out, I slowly begin to remember where these things go. And by process of elimination, once I get rid of all of these parts back on the car, then the vehicle is complete. So tag and bag, use this. Use this. Every one of our industry partners say that this is probably one of the #1 things that new techs fail to do, is label their parts and keep it all in one place. It just makes it so much easier on reassembly. So I'm reassembling the bumper corner that we took off one of the first couple of videos. Notice the way that I'm protecting the older parts of the bumper. I found some old blue sheet over there, and then I'm also using the packing that came with the bumper end on my bumper stand, because when you turn these upside down, even though that's the textured plastic, you can still damage these. And so always protect that stuff as best you can when you are reassembling this stuff, because it's very difficult to repair those, and sometimes almost impossible, honestly. So got the bumper on the car, and now I just want to show you a couple of little tips and tricks on reassembly. There's little ears on these plastic retainers, and so and then also you'll see down in through here we have little retainers on each side. Just most of our import cars have. Here's the new bracket, which I don't really need, so I'll probably just take it back. But I bought it just in case, because it was damaged, just in case, since the point of impact was on that side. You can see I got my clips and bolts all out, screws, ready to go. And so basically all I'm going to do is I'm going to line up each one of my bolt holes, make sure we're close before I start snapping things together. Always make sure your holes are close, and then I'm going to begin to snap it all back together. So yeah, and they just go right back together pretty easy. So pretty simple task. I just wanted to show you some little tips and tricks on those. And as you can see, it looks like our color matched up really well. I'm happy with that. Now that I have all my holes lined up and everything looks good, I'm going to make sure my clips are good. And typically when I put these on, I just make sure all of my little tangs are lined up. The line is lined up here and here. And then I'm just going to give it a little bump. Just like that. And you should hear a click each time. Should not be a whole lot of force. If you have to hit one any harder than that, something's holding it up and it's going to keep you from mounting it properly. And as soon as I'm done, my holes should line up just like that. So once I make sure all of those are clipped in, run my bolts in, and we're golden. Got the bolts all back in there. Now it's on to the tail lights. Tail light here. Typically, a lot of your tail lights have hidden hardware, and as you can see here, there's a little ear for that to fit into, and then right here is the little slot that's going to go into. Sometimes it's a little bit tricky. Also, I've got a line-up pin or a clip right here and one up here. So first things first is let's get it plugged in. Make sure you plug it in and you hear the click. Heard the click. Set her in here. This is my painted side, so I'm going to be extra careful as I'm fitting it up in there. I'm going to make sure it's there. If you remember when we took them out, we gave them a quick little snap. I'm going to do the same thing on putting it back in. I'm going to feel where it looks good. I see my holes are lined up. Bam, we're in. 8mm, my little 8mm bolts that go in there. Line. Next thing I'm going to check on my tail light is to make sure my fitment, I'm going to follow the line around it and make sure that the fitment looks good. No wide gaps or anything weird. Looks good. Okay, so now we're on to the emblems and a couple other things. First things first, every time I'm working around any kind of gap, say a door gap or a hood or a hatch in this particular case, always make sure and check your gaps before I shut this. So I'm going to actually just kind of hold it and look at it. I'm going to check the gap as I go down to make sure nothing's going to overlap or anything weird. Looking at both sides before I ever latch that. Looks good. The gap looks a little bit big, but I think it's just that way on both sides. So I'm going to compare it. I'm going to compare tail light gap and body gap. And as you can tell from the factory, that's got a pretty good size gap, which we didn't move the hatch anyway, but this corner, the point of impact was right here on this corner, so it could have changed that, but everything looks good. And that's just a good reference is if you think you've got too wide of a gap, always check the other side to compare it to.